Okay. So, um, I wanted to quickly run through just your upcoming assignment. So we'll talk about that for a little bit. We'll talk about just maybe a little recap. I had a couple of things that I missed last class in terms of the syllabus, so I want to go over that. And then we are going to be talking about the theory perspectives that you all hopefully read. And so tonight, what we're going to do is it's going to be a little bit of a twist. So we're going to go at it through the scope of the licensure exam. Because a lot of the theories that are in the book or that were mentioned in the book are also on the exam. So what I did was only specific ones we're going to do questions. And then what we'll do, because there's so many theories, is we will do almost like a part two next week where we will do breakout groups. So today we'll be all together. I did Zoom polls, so you all will be able to do your answers. It's broken up into sections, so we'll do the questions and then we'll go over the material. We'll do the questions and then we'll go over the material. So we'll do that tonight, and that's it. That's all we're gonna do because it's a lot of information. So I don't want to overload you with like a bunch of PowerPoints and things like that. I want to really be able to apply these theories. Then next week, what we'll do is we'll do some breakout groups. And then we'll also focus more on once I know you have a good knowledge of what the theories are, then we can be able to apply them to cases. And so we'll work a little bit more on applying it to cases as well, because it's just a lot, it's a lot to cover. So I'm really hoping that you did read. It's going to be imperative that you read. The other thing I wanted to go over just really quickly is your assignments that are coming up, wanting to make sure that you don't have any questions about them. Um, Let me pop open our little, I just look at the chart. That's how I keep organized. So you have your theory mapping exercise that is due on September 20th. Um, your empirical evidence scavenger hunt, and that is due on September 27th. So, are there any questions about those two items?
Can you just explain the empirical scavenger hunt one more time?
Sure,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. So what I tried to do was, so your paper is really the main focus of the course. And so that was really the only thing as a professor that I had to make sure that I did. So what I did was I built smaller assignments that will help you with that. So the scavenger hunt is really just making sure that you know how to find an article about the theory that you potentially will write about. So it's kind of to help you build up some articles that you will use in the paper. So that's really the purpose of it. It's fine if you just pick a random article and then you don't end up using that theory. That's fine too. But really, it's to help you really start to think about like what your population is, what your social problem will be, and then how will this theory like apply to it. So, um, let me go to the actual assignment. So that's like the kind of the overall arching, but let me get the details of it, which is on the course. Let me see. So with the scavenger hunt, you're going to choose a theory. So remember, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly because it's just easier to share screen. Um, Put it in student mode. Yeah. Okay. Not my whole desktop now. So we go to assignments. I'm gonna scroll down just really quickly. So in part one, the instructions in part one have the list of the broad perspectives. So you see systems theory. These are the 8 that we're gonna talk about tonight. Um, so you could choose one of those, or you could choose one of the specific theories. And the specific theories are listed here under your part two of the paper. Um, so you could choose any of these. Like tonight, we're going to talk about systems for sure. Erickson, we're going to talk about. Let me see, is there anything else on this list? Yeah, and then we're actually going to talk about some more of them next week because I have different theories that we're going to talk about next week. Um, so you could choose either or. Okay, let me go back. And then you're going to um, find an article about it. So what's really going to help you is to kind of understand what your kind of focus of your paper will be, and then just choose an article that you would use for the paper. You're going to summarize the article. You're going to give me the citation, give me the purpose of the study. If that's normally all of your articles are going to have that, the methodology, who were the participants, how was the study conducted, like details about the study, what were the key findings, and what are the implications for social work. Does anyone need help with implications for social work, or is that something that you're used to doing at this point? Because I know that this class, I'm not sure exactly when it falls, but I know it falls like earlier in your studies. So do I need to explain what implications for social work means?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So you will be blue in the face because they're going to continue to ask you to do this. Like every paper is going to ask you for implications for social work. And typically what that means is you gave me a problem. Let's say, for instance, you want to talk about substance use disorders. Okay, I want to talk about substance use disorders. You might pick like a specific population, or you could just talk about it in general. Um, and then you're going to find an article that uses a theory that talks about that. And so normally with substance use disorders, a lot of the theoretical things will be more about your behavioral theories, because when you think about behavioral theory, you think about how do you change that behavior? Like, how do you change the substance use behavior? And a lot of the evidence-based practice is really going to talk about that reward system. Like, we do a lot of positive reinforcement. When you think about like your chips, you did 30 days, you did 60 days, you have a year clean, right? So that underpinning is going to be behavior theories, and how we really look at how we treat the behavior, what are the triggers, and then also what are the consequences of that behavior, and how do we manipulate that to help change a person's behavior. So that's going to be a lot of your substance use programs are based on that, basically. And so that you I'm sure could find lots of articles about that. And so if that's something you're interested. What about this would you need to know? Like as social worker, like if you were to tell social workers about this, what would you tell them? Like how would this change the way that they interact with the population? Are there techniques they should use? You might say, well, cognitive behavioral therapy works really well with this population based upon this information I found in the article. A lot of times the articles have the implications at the end. So you can just literally use those. But just in general, like if you're trying to come up with them yourselves, like what what impact does this have on practice? What impact does this have on policies? Like, how should policies change because of this information that you just, summarized? How would this impact how we interact with the community? What resources does the community need? So those types of things. And what I'll do is I will also send out a course announcement, just giving more detail about, and I'll probably just put it under here, some bullets about kind of what implications mean. But that's normally what it is. Implication to practice. So how does this impact practice? How does this impact policy? And how does this impact research? So like, is there any further research? But for this assignment, that part normally, that we don't need to do that part. But normally when you do your papers, that's normally what they're looking for. Implications to social work. How does that impact practice? How does it impact policy? And how does it impact research? That's typically the three areas. When you see implications, that's normally what they're looking for. So basically, why do we care? Why should social workers care about the information you just shared? Like, why does this matter? How should social workers change their techniques or practices based upon the information that you just shared? So it's like a conclusion, like why this matters to social work. Is everyone comfortable with searching the library for articles? Okay.
I haven't done it yet.
Okay. So let me give you a little preview. So when you go to umaryland.edu, you are going to go to, and our database is really nice, so just to let you know. It's very nice. Um, Libraries. So did you see what I did? I went to academics, I went to libraries. I'm sure it's multiple ways to get to it. And then you're gonna go to Health Sciences and Human Services Library, and it's gonna bring this up. I normally do advanced search. And then you can put your kind of keywords in there. So I could do substance use and theory. And you just click search. On the side, it will let you, I normally click available online because sometimes they'll give you things that you can't actually like pull up, so that doesn't help you. Um, but like this is a book, so maybe that's probably, well, it says available online, but a guide to treating substance use through family systems therapy. So you may find that the title will have the theory in it, or you may find that it has a therapy in it. But every therapy has a theory behind it. Does that make sense? So even though it says family systems therapy, it's going to be based on systems theory. So if you wanted to take systems theory, you could use this article because I'm pretty sure. Is it available online? Where is it? Okay, maybe this one was oh, this is a book. Okay, that's fine. So maybe do it was looking good though. Let's do oh exclude. I don't want you to exclude it. Don't exclude it. Am I signed in? Okay, you gotta sign in first. That might be why. I'm like, why is that working? Okay, this should be better. So make sure you sign in. Um, okay, there we go. Mm, let's not do the book because that one might be a book is a little much. Treaty. Oh, why are they not giving me? Okay, apply filters. Okay, here we go. It's better. So you probably will have to sift through. If you already know your theory, you could just put the theory in there and see what happens. Like let's see if we change this to theory and put systems. Let's see what happens. Theory. So it says recovery ecosystems, a whole health approach to substance use prevention and treatment. So you see how it doesn't say theory in there, but we know ecosystem is a theory, right? So even though it doesn't say theory, we know that it's going to have some reference to a theory. Like, where is I keep picking stuff that don't have no PDF. I'm trying to get a PDF. Okay, this one has a PDF. Who care for a person? I don't like that one though. Okay, here we go. Using systems theory. Can I read the article? Let's see. Okay, well, not that one. I'm having bad luck. Let me see what y'all saying. Oh, does it matter how old the study is? In general, I would do 10, no more than 10 years, but sometimes there are articles that we call like seminal articles that had a really big study, and that are really good to use. Okay. Is it something? Why am I not getting no? Let me see. So that's a good question. Oh, okay. Open access. Okay. Oh, here we go. Get PDF. It's like how many times do I have to sign in? Here we go. Finally got it PDF. So the article is called The Impact of Substance Use Disorders on Families and Children from Theory to Practice. So this is great. This is from 2000. Okay, it's old, but it's from 2013. But I would say I'm fine with this because it's going to probably give you a wide variety and a wide perspective of what's going on. Let me try to. So see how this gives you an introduction and a theoretical framework. Not every article will have a theoretical framework, but some do. Especially if you see that word, like I said, therapy, you can always find the theory behind the therapy, if that makes sense. So cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is probably our favorite word. That is based on cognitive theory and behavioral theory, a mixture of both. And so you can talk about CBT because that's going to fall under our social behavioral perspective. Okay. So in your book, there's like a nice table that gives the perspectives and then it lists the theories to the side. So that might also help you figure out like what may be good to do. Um, and oh, look, attachment theory. So you could talk about substance use and attachment. So you're just going to summarize like what this article talked about. I don't know that this is an actual research paper. I don't think they like surveyed anything. Yeah, this just has a case example. So you can just literally just summarize what you learned from the article and that's fine. Right? Because this one isn't necessarily a empirical article where they actually studied anybody. It really is just giving you like best practices and kind of what is best. And normally they will have a summary. When in doubt, you can look at the summary to see like, okay, is this worth me reading? And this one was pretty short actually. So, any other questions? Let me look. Sorry for assignment. Okay, I've got a question after we know the okay. For the theory, okay, the theory map picture. Let me make sure. I have a question, but I would to answer it. Follow up on that assignment. Available is there. Okay. Okay. So are we good with the scavenger hunt? Does that make sense on how to look for the article? And sometimes you do have to play around with your keywords because different keywords will bring you different things. But don't be discouraged if it doesn't have the word theory in the title. That doesn't mean that there's no theory in the article, or that you can't pull the theory in to it. So I want to also, hopefully by the end of this class, you'll have a really good kind of concept of the theories that we're going to go over. Sarah, did you have a question?
No, I think you addressed it.
Okay. I just want to double check before we move on to the theory mapping. Any other questions about the scavenger hunt? And that's just honestly a cute title. It's really not, it's like a, it's just you're summarizing the article. That's really what you're doing. Okay, so when it comes to the theory map, let me go back to my course. Is there a format? So I'm not really big on the format. Um, because this is one of your smaller assignments, again, just to help you with your kind of big doozy assignments, um, it I'm really the type of person I am. Like if I wanted a certain format, I would give it to you. But for this, however you want to summarize it is fine. You could do bullet points, you could do a paragraph style, you could do an Excel spreadsheet if that is what helps you. What I really want to make sure you have are just these concepts. The name and founding theorists, what are the core concepts? History and development, what are the strengths, what are the limitations? Um, again, social work application, how can you apply this to families, individuals, and the community? I'm also not big on length. Like I'm not a teacher that will take points off because you did too much or you did too little. As long as you have the information, I don't care how long it is. I just want the information. Dan, question.
Yeah, so it seems like the, most of the theory map, maybe not, well, I guess also the social work application, could just be gleaned from the text book. Is
Yes.
it essentially you process it and then like rewrite it in your own words versus like the way that it's laid out there? But it doesn't seem like, do you expect additional citations for this, I guess?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
So basically make that into something that makes sense in our brains that,
Yes.
okay, presents it in a coherent way. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
No problem. And that way you can like I don't know if you're visual, like if you're a visual person like me, I like charts. So it might just help you understand what the theories are. And also I would pick theories that like that match. So like if you're picking systems, then it makes sense for you to also pick family systems theory. Like you know what I mean? So especially if these are the theories you're thinking about for your paper. So that's really what this assignment is for, geared towards understanding and brainstorming about your paper. So another, let me see, what's another, so if you're gonna talk about developmental slash life course, you might want to talk about Erickson. So that counts as two, right? Because you can do the broad and then you do the specific. Um, And for the broad, you will have more of a general description, and then your specific theories will have kind of more of the other ones. Like the broad is more of like a category, and there might be all these different theories underneath it. And so when it comes to the history, you might just talk about like what was the beginning of systems theory, like who is known for systems theory. And then when you start describing it, you might start talking about ecological theory, which is a specific theory, so you'll be able to kind of go um between. So it looks like a lot, but then it's not, if that makes sense. And if you're ever having trouble with any of this, let me know. And I can provide a template because it definitely says I'm going to provide one. So if I need to provide one, it's just going to be Excel. But then that way you can just plop it in there. You can plop your information in there. Let me just make sure I got uh okay, the syllabus said 10 to 15 years. Oh, great. That's good. Let me see. Yep, informal. Yep, informal. Really, the only formal one is probably going to be your reflection paper, just because I want to make sure you got the paper kind of style down. And then of course your parts of your paper will be more formal, but these kind of beginning assignments are more informal. And so not going to be really heavy on formatting for that. How we feeling? Okay, good. Okay. The other thing I did not mention is that, which hopefully you saw in looking at the syllabus, is that participation is also part of your grade. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate, what does participation look like? What does that mean? What's considered participation? Um, and so what I would say is definitely participating in class via chat or verbal. So I take both, that's fine. And it's not even to say you have to say something every class. I just want to know that you're engaged. And so like maybe if we do a breakout group, maybe, change up the person who's reporting out. So that's not always the same person, so that everyone kind of gets a chance to speak. If we have discussion, you're participating. We're about to do some polls, so make sure you're participating on the poll. Um, so things like that. So it's not as concrete, back in the day you just get points for showing up to class. So it's kind of similar. But just not wanting you to just not have any engagement in class. Of course, that would stick out to me. But if you are participating, you're asking questions, like I said, obviously it's a large class, so I don't expect to hear everybody's voice every class. But making sure that we are also honoring our community agreement, we're allowing for all voices to be heard and not, you know, um, making anyone feel like they don't have a part in the class. Um, just made a table in Word. Okay, please share it. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we can share it right in the chat. Sounds good. Okay, so any other questions about the course in general? What other courses are you all taking right now? If I can ask, I just want to know. 610. Is that research? I think that's research.
No, I
Oh,
think
okay. Oh,
all of us who are full time, I think, are in the same classes. So
okay.
uh, history of oppression, social work
Oh,
with
okay. Yes.
individuals, and social work with communities.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us part-time folks are also in the same 610 section, incidentally, now that I'm looking at it.
Okay. Okay. So 610 is the history of oppression. And then you said social work with individuals and social work with, you said families?
Communities.
Oh, communities. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Um, so they should be are they talking about theory in their classes? I'm pretty sure are they mentioning theories? Okay, what have you heard so far in class, if anything?
In 610, we're talking about social identity primarily right now. So
Okay.
like, I think that's going to lead to theory, and it's I definitely see how it's adjacent, but unless I've missed something, we haven't really dug into theory specifically.
Okay. Anybody else have had any theory discussions in your classes?
Not quite yet.
Not yet.
Okay, still early. Okay, so I told my husband that I think you're gonna love me and maybe hate me just a little bit because so I was thinking about this. So to compare what this class is like, when I looked at chapter 2, I was like, oh, this is kind of like in the nursing program when they have that I don't even know what the class is called, but where they have to like memorize all the bones in the body or like all the muscles and stuff like that. It's this this is it. This is kind of what you're going to be doing. So, I sent out this week a study guide because it still was long, but it's not as long as the chart in the book. But I do want you to know that you are going to have to study the theories. Like you will have to put some effort into studying them. Sometimes social work is more of like skimming and more like, oh, like concepts, but these are like definitions. And so you are going to have to really understand them. Um, like I said, we'll probably won't comprehensively go over each of them. Um, but I want to make sure that you have the like, there's so many of them. So you're going to be exposed to a whole bunch of them. But the like core foundational kind of, you're not a social worker unless you know these theories kind of thing. Like I feel like strengths perspective is like one of those. Like if you've never heard, strengths perspective, then like you're not a social worker. Do we need to know all the related slash major concepts, or if we can name a few, we're good. Yeah, so I definitely want you to know like the major concepts, like the major tenets. I think it's good. And then understanding since you're in your individual practice with individuals, kind of seeing how it relates to what you're seeing in those other classes. Like how does the theory translate into practice? Because like we're probably not going to talk too much about that in terms of like techniques and engaging clients. Like we're probably not going to talk about those things. Um, but understanding how we view a person and their ability to change or their behaviors is really major. Like I feel like your whole purpose of being in the MSW program is to find out what is your theoretical framework going to be. Like, who are you going to be as a social worker? How are you going to see your clients and the things that they are experiencing? Because that's major, right? That's really major. And so we love a Sigmund Freud, but maybe there are some other things that we can take into account, right? Because some of the theories that are very foundational to social work and to kind of the profession that we are in, um, is a little outdated, right? It's not diverse. It's not taking into account it's not inclusive, right? Because they weren't really maybe caring about inclusivity too much back then, right? And so, really understanding those things, and understanding like, yes, we do need to know these theories, but how am I going to practice and how does that look in terms of theory? And then how do we go from theory to practice? Like, what does that look like? Do we need to, yeah, okay, I answered that. Go ahead, Sarah.
I guess we'll follow up on that. When I said major concepts, like in the book, there's like 15 major concepts per theory. So what I was asking is, do we need to have all of those memorized necessarily? Or, okay, cool. That's more what I was getting at. But what you said makes a lot of sense. The most important thing is being able to identify theories and how we would apply them.
Yes. And I
Okay,
think
cool. Thank
too,
you.
what I will help us with is really comparing them. I think helps to see what the differences are, maybe some similarities, maybe some differences. And then what I like to do also is categorize them. That really helps because all normally when you look at a broad theory and like all the specific theories underneath of it, it's like this is the foundation, like this is what everyone has in like all the theories have in common, and then this is kind of like what they're saying on their own kind of thing. So definitely don't want you to memorize all 15 major concepts of all these theories because there's too many of them for you to do that. So definitely like what distinguishes it is good. Um I'm not even really too big on like some things you might need to know the founder. I think you're just gonna that's innately gonna come because you're just gonna get tired of hearing it. Like you're gonna get tired of hearing the Pavlov and the dogs. You're gonna get tired of hearing about Sigmund Freud and all his like theories on sexual stuff. Like it's gonna be like, what's happening? Uh so I don't even think it's that part is as important as what that means for how you look at families. Like I feel like that is definitely more important. And so hopefully we'll be able to get to some of that. Definitely, maybe not all tonight, but definitely over the course of this course is really understanding how the theories help us to assess, how the theories help us to understand human behavior. And then you're just gonna be diagnosing all your family. You're gonna be like, you know what? I read about you. And that's actually going to help you. It's going to help you to really understand. I also want to say that it is not my expectation, because I know I taught this class asynchronously, and so the students felt like it was so much information, and it's hard to like remember and not maintain it. Is that what I'm saying? Maintain? That's not the word I'm thinking. But you know, remember, retain. I was like, that maintain don't sound right. Uh, so retain. It's hard to retain. So I don't want you to feel like um that pressure. Like I want you to have a good knowledge. Like I don't want you to leave my class and be like, I don't know nothing and I ain't learned nothing. But I also don't want you to feel so anxious about like learning every single like piece of information. It's going to stick because it's going to be we're going to drill it into you. Like it's literally you're literally going to continue to hear the concepts all throughout your courses. And so I don't want you to think like this is the only time you will hear this information. It is not. Um, and if it is, that would be a disservice to you because it's all connected. Like the therapy that you all, I don't know how many want to be therapists, but the therapy that you're going to be, come on, yes, come on. We need some good therapists. The therapist that if that's what you want to be, I am not one of those. But if you want to be a therapist, I took a different route. But if that's what you want to be, you know, theory is going to be major in terms of what techniques you're going to use, and how you want to interact with clients. So that's my little spiel. Um, yeah, when reading, yes, because it's a lot of information. Even to be honest, when you graduate, are you going to remember everything that you learned? No. Um, it's so much information, but really what's going to be pivotal is to be able to apply it. So if what we can do is learn foundational things for you to understand how to apply theory to your cases is going to be big. Whether you are in internship or not, like being able to apply it to a case is going to be big, because once you get into like research, I'm so glad you don't have research this semester. I'm glad it's later. Once you get into like research, they're going to ask you about your theory. Like what theory, are you going to talk about? And so this class will definitely help you build on that. If you ever publish and do research, it's very much all tied together, right? They want to know how are you looking at this? What lens do you have on? And so we're going to talk about that. So my first activity that I want us to do, this is going to be very activity driven. We're going to do a matching. So it's just going to be those 8 broad perspectives. And I want you to be able to match them with the definition so that we all have like a foundation. So this is my first time using this matching game. So I'm going to drop it in the chat and then let's hope it works. I did click it and it did come up for me. So hopefully it'll work. So you'll click like either side, and then that second one that you click is supposed to be the match. So if you click conflict, then your second one will be like the definition of conflict perspective. So let me know if it works. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. Is it working? Okay. Susan, you said no?
I'm supposed to identify myself first. Is that it's hard for me to tell what's an ad and maybe that's just my age. What's an ad and what's the actual thing? Sorry.
Okay. No, no, no. So let me show you what it looks like so you can see. Because I did see that. So on my end, they always want you to buy something.
Okay, I found it.
So if you hit start, it should
Yeah.
yeah, because mine has Pandora. Oh, it has music. Okay. And so you're just gonna click through. Okay. I'm not sure if I get your scores or not. Um, but we're gonna go over it and then just talk about if it was hard or difficult. So I wanted to just say it out loud. So we'll just click through. You tell me which one it is. So which one is the perspective that suggests human behavior is learned as individuals interact with their environments? Which one did you put for this one?
Social behavioral?
Mm-hmm. What about focuses on human behavior and how it unfolds across the life course?
Developmental.
Developmental.
Yep.
Yes, perfect. What about focuses on the processes whereby individual and collective actors seek and exchange resources and the choices made in pursuit of those resources?
Exchange and choice.
The theory.
All right. Um, okay, we got 0.5, 37.5. What about the perspective that focuses on how people learn through interactions with each other to understand the world and their place in it?
Social constructionist.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So we have humanistic left, conflict, and systems and psychodynamic. So emphasizes the individual's inherent value, freedom of action, and search for meaning.
Humanistic.
Humanistic. Nice. What about draws attention to conflict?
Conflict.
Yeah. That's easy. What about sees human behavior as the outcome of reciprocal interactions of persons operating within linked social systems?
System perspective.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I can't see the chat at the moment because I'm on the screen. So I know you're putting them in the chat too. So great. And then the last one, psychodynamic, is concerned with how internal processes such as psychological needs, drives, and emotions motivate human behavior. This one is probably the most known one. Oh, I won. Oh, how nice. So that one is probably the most I won't say it's the most famous, but it's the probably the most foundational in terms of when we think about like therapy. Like when you think about therapy, you think of like psychotherapy. And so that's where the psycho comes from is the psychodynamic, because that's the foundation of psychotherapy. When you think about psychodynamic, especially when you are thinking, and I'm going to share things about the exam, but I don't want you to feel also anxious, like, oh my gosh, I have to remember this for the next 2 years because I don't take the exam until, closer to graduation. I don't want you to feel like that either. But the more you hear it, it'll stick. Um, so for, I don't even know why I talked about the exam. Psychodynamics, psychotherapy. Mm. I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, that one is probably one of the most foundational and kind of introductory theories. There was something I was going to say about that. But let's just get into the poll questions and then we will talk about, yeah, that's our kind of first poll question is psychodynamic. So these questions are going to be scenario based and also definition based. I'm not going to go full licensure prep on you because you're going to get that. But I do want to let you know that these questions are formatted like the exam. And so just to help you kind of sift through, obviously these are theoretical questions. And I picked these theory categories because these are on the like may show on the exam, and then this is how they may show up. So okay, you should see your quiz. There are two questions. You can answer both of them at the same time, and then we'll go over the answers, and then we'll talk about psychodynamic.
So I my hope one day is to take a class about human development and we never talk about fraud. Freud. That's my hope one day. Go one class and he's not mentioned.
I don't know about that. I don't know if you're gonna, I don't know if you'll get that. All right, so let me end the poll and share the results. Maybe stop sharing. Let me come back to it. I'm gonna come back to it. Okay. So what I have done, and you all will get this, I think this is the one I've dropped in the chat, but I'm going to upload this, and also the questions that we go over tonight will also be uploaded with the rationale. The reason I didn't give that to you ahead of time is because I want you to be able to test your knowledge. So this is a simplified way of understanding psychodynamic theories. Um, Psychodynamic theory, your main tenet is going to be about the internal conflict that is happening, and we're about to talk about what that really means. More about your personality, your three parts of your personality, and your levels of awareness. So this is saying that there's an internal conflict, and typically that the internal conflict is due to your past experiences. Has anyone ever heard of adverse childhood experience or ACE study? So when you think about psychodynamic, you can kind of think about the ACEs. Like this is more about your childhood. And so how do we change your behavior? Well, if we resolve the feelings and emotions and connected to whatever, like we find out what happened to you in your childhood and talk about that, then that will change your behavior and help you be less anxious, be less depressed, and those sorts of things. Like that is the target of your intervention. It's going to be resolving past or childhood traumas or hurts. So when you hear things like childhood trauma, adverse childhood experiences, it's psychodynamic. Um, and you see psycho, right? Psychoanalytic, psychosexual, defense mechanisms is also part of the Freudian franchise. Psychosocial, object relations is also under that. So they all focus on how the stages in the beginning, like if there were things that did not, for a lack of a better word, if there were things that did not go according to the standard of how they think it should go, right? The stages that they present, um, then that's why their behavior as an adult is the way it is, right? It's connected to object relations is literally talking about infants and how they relate to their mothers. And then eventually they also added fathers on there as well. Um, so big category. The way our out of those 8 categories that we just talked about, um, this one is actually called psychodynamic. So this would fall under. Some of them are going to be similar, but they might call them something different. So these are kind of like the smaller, so broad, and then we have specific theories that fall underneath of it. So when you hear broad theory, just means like the category. What do these all have in common? And then specifics, these people, right? All these theorists said, hey, I agree with that, but this is what I think how we can use that. Um, so you have the id, the ego, and the superego. I like to think about the id and the superego as like the devil and angel, almost. The id is more focused on your immediate gratification. The superego is like the more moral part of your personality. And then the ego is almost like the engine or like the executive functioning. So it determines which one it's going to follow. So a lot of the theories that we talk about, especially Erickson, they are based on how mature is your ego, right? If you have an immature ego, then a lot of the defense mechanisms come from an immature ego. If you have a mature ego that goes through all these stages perfectly, then this is the result. These are the behaviors you will have because you went through all these stages the standard or correct way. So anytime you have a standard, right, and say that this is normal, then when it falls on the outside of the standard, it's looked at as abnormal or something to fix. And so I think that as social workers, it's really hard because that's like the almost the foundation of our whole profession is like fixing people. But what we are learning is that that's not really what we should be doing, right? Because that says that there is a almost like a power dynamic sometimes, a lot of times, right? Child welfare, there's a power dynamic. When you're a therapist, that can be a power dynamic depending on how you do your therapy. Um, and so we're really learning that we need to break some of those things down and not be that way anymore. And so when it comes to normal and abnormal, even when you look at the DSM-5 TR, does everyone know what that is? It's like our holy grail of mental health. Okay. I don't even know what it stands for off the top of my head because I just say DSM. But it's our diagnostic manual, right? It has all the disorders. So when you think about major depressive disorder, those criterias are going to be in your DSM-5. TR just means it's revised. So it was a 4, it was a DSM-4, it was a DSM-4 TR, it was a DSM-3, so this is just the newest standard. Every time they update it, they take disorders out or they add disorders in. And so there's a debate even in social work about what does it mean to diagnose someone, right? The industry of diagnosing and medication, right? We're diagnosing just so that we can get paid as social workers with our insurances, right? And how does that pathologize a person? So we have a long way to go. You will have social workers that say that they do not go by the DSM. But I would say the majority of us do. And really, what I would say, it's more of a guide. Even these theories, it's more of a guide. This is not to say that because a child does this, this means that there's something wrong with them. But it might say, okay, how can we see what to change or where did these behaviors come from? Is it something in their environment? Is it something in their genetics? Right? We're really looking at like epigenetics, gene therapy is also something that's very trendy and up and coming. Um, how can we target these behaviors and fix them? That's basically what we are kind of trained to do. But I would just also say that even thinking like in your history of oppression class, you should be also talking about how we don't want to also perpetuate this system, this oppressive system, right? And so it is a delicate balance because as a social worker, you want to get paid and you want money. I don't know anyone that said, I want to be a social worker and be poor. Nobody ever, right? So you want to get paid, but sometimes how the system is set up, it's like, you know, those types of things are in place. I don't even know why I got on that tangent, but just want to let you know that I don't want you to think that we are learning this to lock it in like that. Diagnostic statistical manual. Yep, I knew it was statistical in there. Yes, our diagnostic manual. It's like our guidebook to life or something. It's our DSM-5. So we have our id, which is our pleasure principle. We have our ego, which is our more of our functioning and like an engine almost. And then our super ego. Then we have the 3 levels of
That's a
consciousness.
question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hey, so one quick thing. So I know as you were talking, it got me thinking. I remember 8 years ago, right? When this person came to the White House and a lot of psychologists were going on TV, they were diagnosing him. But then I think the APA came out and said that what you're doing is unethical because you did not treat him, so you should not diagnose someone you didn't treat. And I know you've been joking about we diagnose our friends and our coworkers and all this stuff. And I'm assuming that's natural. We just want to diagnose people. Do we, as we go through this, need to learn a balance of being careful, of not diagnosing people who we're not treating? And if so, how do we make sure we don't do that? How do we make sure I'm here on a first date and this person is talking about their mom, and I'm started thinking about Freud, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she wants to kill her father, all that stuff. How do you make sure that you don't, because from my understanding from 8 years ago, it's unethical to do that. First, is that true? And Sue, how do we make sure that we don't do that? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's a good question. So you're naturally going to do that. I think what the APA is saying is we shouldn't, like, your words have power, right? So when you're thinking about, and we naturally do it with social media, we naturally use, like, we use the word bipolar in our regular language. And so as social workers, we have to be careful with that, right? We have to be careful that we're not using the diagnosis um in a more like informal way, to the point where it's like um it's part of like the pathology, right? So you are kind of perpetuating that, when really you want to make sure that you keep that. So it's like some of that. um your thoughts are going to be fine, so you thinking it is fine. You can think it. You can even say, do you want to get, like, I told my mom, we were going through the DSM-5 one time after class, and I was like, Ma, I think you have at least 5 of these, which is, makes you eligible. And she was like, well, what is it? Read it out loud. And so I read all the criteria, and she was like, oh, yeah, I do have that. So it wasn't me diagnosing her, but that was just saying, hey, maybe you should look into this, right? I saw these criteria, maybe you should look into this. But you definitely, when it comes to diagnosing, you'll be able to do that with your license, with your LMSW. And so it is important that you have to have the information in order to diagnose. Like, that's just in general. So I think that's really what the APA was trying to, like, get people to stop throwing out all these disorders like they are the experts, because how can you really know someone has a disorder without ever meeting them or talking to them? So it was just really saying, like, let's not um make this, we're just so desensitized, and we kind of water down and, kind of throw things around. So let's be a little more careful of, like, the words we use. I think that's really what they were saying. Um and that's absolutely true. You should not be writing down that a client is diagnosed with something, of course, in any type of documentation, without it being like, this is who diagnosed them, this is when the assessment was taken, this is who did it, like, this is who did the assessment. I know when I talk with my students in child welfare, a lot of times it will say that the children are diagnosed with all these diagnoses. And I'm like, I need you to look and find, when was this? When did they get diagnosed with this? Was this 10 years ago? Was this last year? And where did they get the assessment? Like, I need you to know, because before we just keep writing it down, like, I need you to know where it came from and who said it, right? Because it might be time for a reassessment. So I think that's really what it is, about being careful that we're not doing that. And when you look at the code of ethics, what I will say is that I don't think you would, like, get your license revoked if you went on social media and said, like, I watch Love and Hip Hop. Love and Hip Hop, such and such, I think they got this, kind of thing. But we just want to be careful about how we are talking about, those types of things. So being more sensitive, since that's our profession. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. That's a good question. So pre-conscious, conscious, and unconscious. So your conscious is your full awareness. That's something I think that most of us are familiar with. Your unconscious are those things that are deep, like their experiences, emotions that are deep, that typically with psychotherapy, it brings it out to the surface. And then your preconscious is going to be things that are below but are easily recalled. And so those are our 3 levels of consciousness. And those are the areas that you're targeting when you use psychotherapy. So, which statement best describes the id according to Freud's theory of personality? Which one did you all pick? Let me show the results. Share results. So we had most people pick B. I have C, but that's not right. You're correct. It is B. So sorry about that. It says it's wrong, but that's right. And then you have the unconscious mind is best described as, and yes, most people got it right. The part of the brain that holds unacceptable desires, impulses, and memories outside of awareness. So perfect. Okay, let's go to our next group of questions. Let me see, do I have anything else to share about psychodynamic? Nope. Okay, so let's launch our next poll. I have 5 polls, and once we're finished, the poll will be finished. Back? Is that what I did? Okay, yes. Okay, this next one has 5 questions, so I'll give you the time to review them. All right. How did you all feel taking these questions? Felt pretty good? So these are kind of some of what you can expect. So on the exam, it's going to give you some behaviors, and then it's going to ask you to kind of match the behavior with the stage. Um, or sometimes it will also help you to determine whether or not the child's behavior is normal or abnormal. And so the answer may be that you would be telling parents it's okay that they act this way. It's okay that your 3-year-old is roaring like a lion because they have pretend play and it's fine. Or if they are 12 and still have an imaginary friend, well, that's kind of outside of that cognitive development. And so we may want to look more into assessing what's really going on. So that's kind of how the exam will look. It will have definition based, it will have stages sometimes, or it will just want to see like what your focus would be based upon what stage the child is in. So more looking like, okay, what are they going through developmentally? So trying to understand like which theory to apply to this would be good. Obviously, it says Erickson at the top, so I'm sure you were like, okay, I need to apply Erickson. Um, and so um, okay, we have 100%. So I'm going to end the poll. And we're going to, I want to do the questions this time. And like again, like I said, you'll get this PowerPoint. So since infancy, a child has experienced significant inconsistencies from multiple caregivers. And this is normally what you will find when it comes to Erickson, trust versus mistrust. And so the answer was B, difficulty in trusting adults. So during trust versus mistrust, it basically says that when you have that infancy stage, if you have a caregiver that responds to your needs, you develop trust. If you do not get your needs met, then you develop mistrust. So even though it seems that the child is like school age, because it says when the child begins school, the infancy part was important, and then the inconsistency from multiple caregivers was key. Our other options are going to be in other stages that Erickson has. The next question was, what should the social worker most likely tell the parents? So I read the last sentence first, just to let you know what the question is. A social worker is conducting a home visit with a family who is frustrated because their 2-year-old child refuses to use the potty and insists on saying no to almost everything. Doesn't this sound like somebody you know? I don't know about you, but definitely me. Um, so basically it's asking you what explains this behavior? Why would a 2-year-old refuse to use the potty and insist in saying no to almost everything, right? And so even if you didn't know Erickson, you probably get the answer right. The child is asserting independence, which is developmentally appropriate. Erickson's autonomy versus shame and doubt, that emphasizes that independence. So all of those things would be typical behavior. And if you work with parents, that's sometimes a lot of your conversation. Like, hey, these behaviors are difficult. I mean, not difficult, they are difficult, but they are normal. And as social work parents, you try to hold space for each other because you like, you know, this normal, but it's not fun to go through. So it's not something that's pleasant, but it is normal. Um, yep, go ahead, Rohan.
So when I was reading this question, I knew the answer was C. When I was reading it, I laughed and I said, if this was a Jamaican parent, the answer would be A. And so my question to you would be, and this is one of the things, and this might be too big for the second day of class, and it's okay if we want to push it to later on. do we get talked to about how we deal with when it comes to different culture? The difference between I have a dietitian and she's white, and every time I talk to her, I mention that she's white. I said to her, what you're telling me to eat and do is what white people do. I am Jamaican. I can't do some of these things you're telling me to do. Do we have these conversations where culture plays? That she wants me to eat all this. I said, as Jamaican, I eat rice. I'm not gonna give these stuff up. And so she said we had to talk through those stuff because I want to maintain my Jamaican heritage as I do these dietitian. Do we have these conversations as social worker where we have these textbooks answers from like Erickson, but I'm talking to a Jamaican family, and they're going to interpret what the kid is doing is trying to show that they're big, and we need to have these conversations. Am I making sense to you?
Yes. Mhm. Does anyone else in the class have an answer? Because this is good. I like this.
I already feel like I've talked too much, but this is a topic that's really interesting to me, actually. So I'm going to say no. I fully agree, and I put in the comments that cultural humility is really important for us as practitioners. I volunteered with a refugee resettlement organization for 18 months and really got a crash course in accepting cultures are going to handle things differently, and our job is to respect dignity and self-determination as much as possible, even if it doesn't look like what we think it looks like. So, sometimes there are some hard safety issues, I imagine, that we can't compromise on. But in general, I think we have to be open to like incorporating a client's cultural experience in whatever we do as much as possible.
Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead, Susan.
So on the one hand, I 100% agree that you have to absolutely listen and be respectful and humble. On the other hand, I actually read a fascinating book last year called Parent Hunt Gather, written by a public health person out of California. And she actually gives an example similar to this. And what she says is, it's interesting how, in some ways, in certain areas, we have forgotten what to appropriately expect of children. And so her argument is actually that, I mean, she's kind of pushing for more grace for children, and that we often have these unrealistic expectations that a child that a 2-year-old child should be able to do X, Y, and Z. Like, why can this not 2-year-old child not use the potty? My first one did it, my second one can't. Or in a different community and cultural context. I don't know. I'm really torn on this. Um, but I guess I get worried because at least what I see in the community I live in is I think people expect too much of children that isn't appropriate. And I think that's part of where this language comes from. But I don't know. I guess I'm rambling. I'm gonna mute myself.
No, it's a good perspective, and yeah, thank you. Anyone else have a answer? Do you feel like we consider culture, or do we um not? Or what you think?
I feel like we definitely have to consider culture, because even the way that social practice is done in different countries isn't the same. So we have to, I mean, what was it? When I was in Morgan, culture and family values was very much, yeah, was very much like talked about, and like it was really much drilled in you because not everybody is going to raise their child the same. As like you can suggest and offer up these solutions, and but at the end of the day, like as long as the child's well-being is okay and the family isn't abusing it, they're going to handle their child their way. That's like somebody coming into your home telling you how to raise your child in a way, and it's like even like if we have children or y'all already have children, you may not take all these theories and consider it while raising your child because that's you already have instilled how you're raising your child. So I think it's like understanding cultures and learning about cultures is very important because you're not going to tell a Jamaican family like that their child is not like, I'm going to use this term, bucking back at them. But it is also important to like give different solutions to help this situation.
Yeah. Rainia, right? Did I say it right?
Yeah, she said it perfect. Actually, Diamond kind of said it kind of exactly where I was going as well, and that the biggest thing for me is wanting to understand how the culture impacts the theory, right? So kind of bringing the two of them together to determine, okay, well, what outcomes do we want, and understanding if the culture is having either a negative or positive impact on the ability of that individual to be either successful, to grow, to be who they want to be in this environment. And so I think it's a factor that should be part of the consideration, but maybe also should be weaved into, okay, what are the recommended solutions, and how do we address culture in the recommended solutions, so it becomes part of the whole process.
Thank you. And I really appreciate everyone's perspective. I think that that's part of kind of evolving. So when I made the statement about how these theories are very, 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 very old, that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? So we have to teach it because as a profession, we have not abandoned them quite, because they're still in the exam, we're still teaching them, we're still using them. But however, we they're not always as modern as we need them to be. And so we know that we don't do one size fit all. And a lot of these theories are one size fit all theories. You either go through these things like you're either normal or you're not, right? And that's not really how people work. Um, And so, like obviously when it comes to child abuse and neglect, it's gonna be, that's my area. So it's gonna be a little bit different in terms of how we consider culture. Um, but you're always gonna validate because if you having respect from your child is that's really what it is, right? I want my child to respect me. And so you like refusing to do something, it's not gonna fly because that, even though we're saying that's normal, but that's not how you are going to conduct yourself in this house, right? And so it's perfectly fine. Um, we can offer a different perspective and say, um, these are things that 2-year-olds do, but how can we explain that and also validate that they want to have in their household order? And as long as it doesn't rise to an abusive type of situation, I think that that's really what we offer, right? Like, how would you normally address this? And maybe offer other techniques if there is some like concerning ones. But if there's not, it's okay that they discipline their child firmly as long as it's not rising to abuse, if that makes sense. Go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Specifically, if the discipline is like going to lead to further like trauma or like mental illness too later on, because some cultures may view like discipline differently. And specifically, like I'm thinking about a case that I'm working with right now. Definitely like a lot of intervention has had to like occur because of it. Um, but at the same time, like respecting the culture and like understanding that the values are absolutely like they see things differently within the family. But the discipline component, like you don't want the child to also like be impacted dramatically and that kind of stuff. So
Thank you. And you have to check kind of where you're coming from, right? Because we have our own like childhood values. We have the way we were raised. We have what we're learning in class. Not all families do things like how my family did it, right? And so I was talking to my students today about just like you can't impose your standards onto someone else, right? And so, as long as we are still having that child be safe, obviously, is paramount. So I'm not saying that child is unsafe because we're going to do our cultural practices, but I'm just saying that we can't impose, like we were talking today. They went into a home visit and they were like, yeah, because the provider, the foster care provider, didn't have plugs in their outlets, and the child was like a one, I think, or walking. Oh my gosh, I had to point that out. And I was like, well, can I be honest? I have a 4-year-old. I've never put plugs in the outlet, because he never messed with them. So don't say that that's something that's wrong because they didn't put outlets in you know what I mean? So you know how sometimes we're just so hyper vigilant because we're learning this information and we're like, these are children. We got to make sure they're safe. And so it's just how we're seeing it. Like, don't like have a conversation. Yes, possibly. I probably wouldn't have a conversation about outlets, but maybe I might have a conversation if I see some maybe other things that are concerning. But you have to check yourself. Well, in my household, we did that. We locked the cabinets. We did, but I've never locked the cabinet. I've never, and so it's just we have to be careful about that piece of it. And I think that's really important as we look at theories because we're literally judging people. Like that, to be honest, that's as social workers, that's what we're doing. We're assessing, we're measuring them up to these theories, right? Seeing where they fall, right? And so you have to be careful with that. And so I think that as you go through your history of oppression class and then hearing these things as well, I think you'll be like, well, this theory sound impressive because it is. Um, it's a lot to do with the history of social work too, being mostly white women who are privileged in some capacity, working with very underprivileged individuals is almost ingrained in social work due to history, which is why cultural humility is such an important thing to consider while we're writing our current history for the next generation of social workers. Yeah, like it's realizing that even the theories we teach are oppressive, like that is big, right? Um, and so making sure that you're able to see like what things make sense or what things are good. Like I think it's good to know like in general how children develop and like norms and kind of how they what you're looking for, but also knowing that norms are different for different populations, for different families, that it's not a cookie cutter. We can't cookie cutter our families. So I'm really realizing that. What we sometimes say in CPS when we have a judgment to something, just because that is not how we would live slash act does not mean it is unsafe or maltreatment. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can talk about child welfare all day. So let's go back because I don't want to steer us too far off. But thank you. That was a great point because culture is going to keep coming up because it's not going to be a whole lot of culture in these theories, especially these like really, really, I don't want to call them ancient, but they're pretty old. Okay, a 28-year-old. So when you see an age of a client in your question, you want to match that with the stage. So we have a 28-year-old. This is going to be the intimacy versus isolation stage. And so that's why the fear of intimacy would be, it also matches the behaviors, right? Avoiding romantic relationships, um, ending them abruptly. So it was clear that we weren't dealing with autonomy and we weren't dealing with role or identity confusion, but it really had to do with how we are interacting in those relationships, interpersonal relationships. Maslow hierarchy of needs. Everyone got this right. Help the client access food and secure a safe place to sleep, right? The thought is that as a human, we want to value the human in a person, right? And so a lot of times when we're treating emotional and mental health disorders, we want to also consider what other needs are happening. As a therapist, you will not maybe fulfill those needs, right? Normally, as a therapist, you may not be handing out food vouchers, or unless your clinic is just all wraparound, they might be a wraparound and do that. But you might have to refer out typically. But you want to make sure your client has their needs met because it's really hard to focus on your depression if you're not able to access food, right? And have a safe place to be. So, making sure that we kind of understand that and have our practice reflect that. So that was humanistic Maslow hierarchy of needs. Here's another hierarchy. Your client is retired and wants to focus on their overall meaning, wants to find greater meaning in their life. So that just really matches with self-actualization, right? Really looking at, hey, what am I doing? How can I fulfill my purpose and have like a deeper meaning in life? So that would be A, self-actualization. And I think that was the last one. I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yeah, that was the last one. All right. So now we're going to do our next quiz. Oh, we already did Maslow. Did I read? I might have duplicated. Yeah, I did. Okay, so on this poll, just do 3 and 4 because I did the questions twice. So just do 3 and 4.
They make you check all of them. So
Okay, so you could just put whatever you put last time. Sorry about that. Okay, we're going to end this poll a little earlier just so we can go over the answers. So this question about our 4-year-old was about looking at the development of initiative. This was also um yeah, this is also Erickson. So it really should have probably been the last one. Also another Erickson one. Um really matching with our age and then also looking at leads. So that's the initiative, but then withdrawals. So in all of the stages, what you'll find is that when they do well, like the positive side of the crises, versus the negative side. So yes, they took initiative, but now they have some guilt because now they're withdrawing. So that's that other side, the guilt part that's coming out. So initiative versus guilt. And then this one is Piaget, which is our cognitive developmental stages. And this one was aligned with pre-operational. This is where we have that pretend play, and we have our egocentric children. They just are really looking at their own perspective, and they struggle to see things from other perspectives. When I think about my niece, I feel like when she turned 8, she was so much more pleasant. I don't know. It was just like she was so like difficult. But it was normal because she just was a little egocentric. Um, then I was like, oh, she got so much better when she turned 8. I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but she just was a little nicer. And then the rest of them, we will just keep going through the slides. I won't pull up the poll, so that we can get through them. We'll do them together. Which system level is the social worker addressing in this intervention? A social worker is counseling a 16-year-old who has been skipping school. The teen reports experiencing anxiety about peer relationship and conflict with parents at home. Which system level is the social worker addressing in this intervention? What do you think? Is it micro, meso, or macro?
Micro.
Okay, Amir, why do you say micro?
Oh, I was not expecting that. Let me see. I'm thinking because it's the individual, this 16-year-old. Um, I mean, I do see the anxiety with the peer relationships and the parents, but it's focusing on that child.
Nice. Perfect. See, you weren't expecting it, but you nailed it. Perfect. The work is focused on the individual. And when you see intervention, you want to focus on what the social worker is doing, right? So even though they might talk about others, your intervention is focusing on that individual. So perfect. Um, All right, let's do this one together. Which system level are we addressing? A social worker collaborates with district administrators and policymakers to develop and advocate for policies that reduce chronic absenteeism. The effort includes improving access to mental health services, enhancing parent engagement programs, and addressing systemic barriers that contribute to truancy. Perfect. No one's gonna say it because now I'm gonna call on you. But yes, macro. Macro, perfect. Addressing policies, programs, institutional change is going to be macro. Perfect. I think no, it's not our last one. I feel like we're coming up on the end ones. From a systems perspective, which intervention would best address the client's needs? We are a hospital social worker helping a 52-year-old client recover from surgery. The client reports feeling overwhelmed because her spouse works long hours and she has no nearby relatives for support. She also notes that communication with her healthcare providers has been confusing. So from a systems perspective, what would we do to help our client? Perfect. Because what is A? If we were to help A, which I mean, we didn't even see nothing about this in the question, so this one's like really off. But what would A be? Psychodynamic, yes. Come on. Yes. Um, so yes, the answer is B. Coordinate with the medical staff and family to strengthen communication and support because that is focusing on how those systems interconnect and making sure that they are having better communication. So perfect. Okay, we're going to move to behavioral. Which behavioral concept does this best demonstrate? A teacher praises a student every time they raise their hand before speaking. Over time, the student raises their hand more frequently. What is that called? Mm-hmm. Yes, it's called positive reinforcement. What would be a negative reinforcement in this same situation?
Would it be maybe like removing, maybe like, oh, because you raised your hand, you don't have to do the pop quiz? Would that be right?
So you take away something I don't want. So,
Mm-hmm.
I remember. I'm trying to think about my psychology. It's take away something they don't want. So I guess if they raise their hand, they don't have to clean up. What do kids do? What do kids do? Let's pretend everyone have to like clean up chores. So I guess if you something you don't want, you raise your hand, you don't, then you take away something negative. So something they I don't know, don't have to clean
I
up
just
or
went with
something.
the pop quiz, dog. I feel like the pop quiz. I don't know.
Yeah, so what I want to make sure you know is that reinforcement means you want the behavior to continue. So we want the hand raising to continue, right? In this instance, we gave the student something positive to get the same result. So negative reinforcement would be doing something negative to make sure that they raise their hand. So, which sounds like punishment, but it really is, do we want the behavior to continue or not to continue? Right? And so that's kind of where we have to focus in on. So I wanted to make sure we kind of knew the difference between those two. So I'm gonna just, I feel like behavior is one of those things that is good to know. And so my example I have taking out the trash. You praise them for taking out the trash or you nag them for taking out the trash. Until they take out the trash, right? So you still want them to take out the trash, but in order to avoid the nagging, I'm just going to take the trash out. So whatever you do, they're going to raise their hand to avoid whatever negative thing you're going to give them, right? So you might say, well, um, if you, I'm trying to think because I'm trying not to use timeout. I feel like timeout is not a, but it has to be something negative you'll do. So maybe, like you said, if they aren't raising their hand, you don't acknowledge them.
Or your
So,
buzzer, have a buzzer. Keep beeping the buzzer until someone raises their hand.
yes.
So an
So
annoying little sound.
uh-huh. Do we need to know positive and negative reinforcement for the exam or just punishment as an umbrella topic? So I do want you to know the differences. So I would say yes. So punishment is a little different. Punishment means you want them to stop the behavior, right?
And,
Um,
sorry, I meant positive and negative punishment because I know
oh,
there's,
punishment. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No,
Oh,
you're
yeah, you
good.
did say punishment. Yeah. No, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I think are harder anyway, so I'm happy
Yeah,
with
no,
that.
I don't normally, that's not on the exam, so we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Positive, negative reinforcement. And then looking as punishment is that we don't want the behavior to continue. We want to decrease this behavior. And so that's why we're um, doing a punishment. It's all very can be very confusing actually. Even to teach, sometimes I'm like, am I explaining it? It's like a little harder to explain sometimes. Trying to let my dog stop barking, but I don't know if he'll ever stop barking. So what I wanted to show, I just want to show this as we close, is this is different than psychodynamic. So can anyone tell me how this may be a little bit different than psychodynamic? Okay, it studies how the external world shapes us, not internal conflicts. I like that, Greta. That's perfect. Yep, perfect. Yeah, it's really not about, they aren't really super focused on like what happened as a child. They're more focused on what happened before your behavior, what happened after your behavior. And so we call this the ABC. So what is the antecedent? What is the behavior? And what is the consequence? Because if I can change the antecedent or the trigger, then, or if I can change the consequence, then I can change the behavior. That's like the overall, um, overarching theory, or not theory, the overarching tenet or belief. Like, hey, if we don't care about your mother, what happened right before you did that behavior and right after? Was there a consequence? How can we reinforce something, or how can we punish something or decrease that behavior, right? What is the behavior we want to maybe replace it with, and how can we um do that? So when you look at substance use, just because it's the easiest one, when you look at drug court, right, that is a behavior theory. It has its own name actually for that theory, in using like court in order to as like a consequence. And so that's how it helps that client reduce their behavior, right, of using the court system. Like, you have to come to drug court. If submit a clean urinalysis, and this is what happened. If you don't, then, the court, that's why the court is monitoring you to try to help you to adjust your behavior. So that intervention, because they have family treatment drug court, which is one of those evidence-based interventions. It's based on behavior theory, because they're really looking at how do we use the court system to help you not use. Like, how can we deter you? Like you said, how can we use these external, right? External things to help you to not do the behavior we don't want. If behavior theory explains how systems shape a person, what's the difference between that and systems theory? Is it that you use behavior theory for an individual's specific behavior, but systems theory for an individual's overall situation? So with systems theory, and that's another theory that you're going to hear over and over and over and over, really looks at how things relate to one another. So how, not just about your individual self, right? But how is your behavior connected to your interactions with your family, your interactions with maybe the school system, maybe your um, society? Like, it takes into account like multiple levels of systems and how it all relates. Whereas behavior is just looking at really that behavior. Like, it's looking at that singular behavior. And it doesn't mean you're not taking other things into account. But it really is targeting more of that versus systems theory is really looking at it's almost like a bigger picture type of thing. Like here are the levels, what are the levels? How do we look at this? Um, and so like what are the multiplicity of factors? So you're looking at it's more holistic, to be honest. It's kind of where we get our biopsychosocial from, is systems perspective, right? Because we're trying to look at each level and not just one thing. So that's what I would say. It's not that behavior theory won't take into account like you said, things in the environment, but it really is looking at stimuli. They use that word a lot, like stimuli, like what's the trigger, right? So even I've used substance use, sorry, but even with substance use, you do focus on triggers, but it doesn't really take into account how the criminal justice system impacts you, right? So this behavior is not just a you problem, but it actually is a systems problem, right? It actually is, why do we even call a drug? Right? Societal factors, right? And so it just takes into, I would say it takes more of a broader approach, but behavior can still look at connections. It's still connections, but it's more like, I would say flat, whereas systems theory is like a, we're gonna take all the, yeah. A tornado. It's like tornado. Yeah. So, and what we will do next week is we will do some breakout groups and we will do more of applying it to a scenario. So that's what we'll do next week. Um, so I wanted to do a little question this week and we'll do some scenarios next week. How you feeling? I tried to simplify it because it's so many theories. You have a whole month before the quiz. So I'm going to also, like the same way I'm breaking it down for these theories, I'll also break it down for the rest of the theories that will be on the exam so that you'll have like a nice study guide. Yeah, social constructionist. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, we can absolutely do that. And what we can do is we can take a scenario and try to apply each of the perspectives to it to kind of see how it differs in how you view it. It's just like okay, you know how when you go to the doctor, they'd be like, one or not the doctor, but like the eye doctor, they'd be like one or two, one or two. Which one is clearer? And so it will be like one systems, two behavior. Like this is how you view the situation. You had an appointment 2 days ago. Yes. Yes, I don't want you to be anxious. I mean, you're gonna be anxious anyways because it's a lot of information. But we're gonna get through it. I'm gonna try to break it down as best as I can. And if there's anything that would be helpful, like will everything on the slides be part of the quiz? I'm gonna say yes. I'm not gonna have the questions, but the content of the slides will be what you want to focus on. Um, but tell me like what will help. So differences will help. So we'll focus more on like how compare and contrasting to help, and then we'll also focus on applying them as well. All right. Well, have a great night. Yes, don't be anxious. It's gonna be okay. We gonna get it. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna post the recording and the transcript
Ошибка, до свидания.
on Blackboard.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.